In part one, we considered a framework for thinking about the transition from the Cold War to our creative era. And in the second part, we'd like to think about the importance of human networks to the promotion of creative interdisciplinarity. But we were left at the end of the last part with the problem of strong dueling departments that end up being the focus of disciplinary work. And we need to think in terms of ways of how we might overcome the power and the, in some sense, the tyranny of disciplines. And so I'd like to talk about that in basically four ways. First, talk about understanding disciplines as almost a kind of religious belief, certainly a paradigm. Then talk about the importance of understanding language differences between disciplines, and how we can understand how to bridge between disciplines by just the simple mechanism of being tolerant of the use of language. Talk about pair work versus teamwork leading to network. And then finally talk about the importance of supporting networks with meso-level institutional support. And we'll say what each of these means in turn. So it's often been observed that different disciplines tend to privilege their own perspectives and methods over competing disciplines, and probably there's no more salient example in recent memory than the science wars of the 90s. But our point of departure here is to say that smart people in universities studying a discipline are probably doing something interesting and probably doing something right. So the first step in building disciplinary bridges is clearly the toleration of disciplinary difference and an attempt to try to actively seek interpretations of what your colleagues are saying that connect to your understanding. Of course, this is all very easy to say, but it's quite hard to do. But the place to start in doing this is with language. And if we start there, maybe there's also the hope of building something of a discipline of interdisciplinarity. Now, tolerance is a good first step, but language can still get in the way. And I use the term linguistic naivete in a particular sense. That is, I'm using it to indicate a belief that words have a single fixed meaning. And unfortunately, disciplines become disciplines by being quite specific in their definitions and their usage of terms. And so they become fairly intolerant of the use of the same term in some, or even related terms, in some other way. And so in some ways, disciplines encourage linguistic naivete and the rejection of the other use of terms. But this is the first step in trying to bridge between disciplines. Now, another way that we can get from disciplinary action to interdisciplinary action is to realize that it's very difficult for a single individual to be radically interdisciplinary. And so the easiest way to do this is to have a pair. Now, I was struck by the notion of pair work when a former student who happened to be one of the most early employees at Google returned to campus, gave a little bit of a talk, and made the assertion that in startups, pairs of individuals working together were 20x more productive than singletons. And I started to think about that and model that. And we won't go into that here, but clearly one of the advantages in pair work is the opportunity for complementary skills, relatively low coordination costs in a pair, say, compared to a larger team, the very large opportunity for marginal creativity because you have, especially if you have people from different disciplines working together, because they'll be acting at the boundary of their disciplines and likely be exploring things that are relatively novel or unique. And then another subtle advantage is that by having compatible individuals working together, you get kind of an emotional leveling effect. But the point to make here is that fundamental to creating great interdisciplinary work and great networks, you'll often find a pair of people working together. Now, as you go to create networks, as these networks emerge from the interaction of pairs and larger teams, we need to understand that departmental faculty and staff have access to lots of advantages by being members of departments. They have a certain identity, they'll have space, they'll have various intradepartmental communications capability, clerical support, and funds directed to that department that they can tap into. When you're talking about interdisciplinary activities, oftentimes they have almost none of this. And so one of the things that we need to do is create meso-level interdisciplinary entities, not really units so much as different kinds of structures to support interdisciplinary work. And there are models of this sort of thing, but they're not very often regularized, and funding for them is spotty and usually project-oriented. And a point that should be made is that we're not looking so much to create new dots, new locations, as we're looking to create dot connectors. And one example of this is an activity that I've been involved in for a number of years called Engineering and Technology Studies at Illinois, and I've given the website there. This all started as a lecture series in response to a blog post and some speculation about, well, why wasn't there a philosophy of engineering as separate from philosophy of technology, and some other things. And it led to the formation of an interest group that spanned campus from north and south of Greene, and it grew to a fairly substantial grassroots network of faculty on both sides that continue to interact, and those individuals have been part of larger educational and research initiatives subsequently. But the point of all this is to say that what we really need is to think about the human capital and the human infrastructure ahead of thinking about IT needs, because it's the human networks that crucially need to be supported. And in our next and final part, we'll consider the move from human networks to electronic networks.